One of the biggest questions I always ask myself when I see a game is getting a remake is this necessary? Well, there is probably no truly right answer to that question since there are so many variables in play depending on the age, style, and one's opinion of a game. But after going back and playing the original Dead Space for the first time a few weeks ago, I was wondering what could they possibly do to make this experience that is arguably one of the greatest in the video game horror genre better. Well, that was actually an easy answer for the dev team, and one I hope future remakes follow. You don't change what isn't broken. Instead, you expand upon it in a creative way without losing what made it so great. And for me, this started with the combat of the Dead Space remake. I was so amazed at how well it felt to control Isaac in the original Dead Space, and the remake captures that perfectly. The aiming and movement are still incredibly smooth, almost feeling near identical. The weapons still have proper roles that make each one feel so unique to use, and it's even expanded upon thanks to the new tweaks to them, like the pulse rifle firing proximity mines and the Ripper being way more powerful. These tweaks have made all the weapons be way more viable than they were in the original, and makes each one even more worth it to try out to see what combination of weapons you like best. Then, of course, the weapons are only as good as the enemies you battle with them are. Luckily, my fears of the enemies being changed too much in the remake was quickly put to rest, because they are basically exactly the same minus some tweaks. The necromorphs in the remake feel much more challenging to battle, and I don't mean that in the sense that the game is hard now, it just feels like they take more damage and are more aggressive. Like, for example, the Twitchers, their sporadic movements feel so much crazier compared to the original, and I found them a blast to fight. Honestly, this could be thanks to the updated graphics and effects the remake has, because this game is beautiful. From the flesh that covers the walls, the dark halls filled with blood splatters, and the top-notch lighting that brings it all together, the Dead Space remake is a visual spectacle that made me just stop what I was doing so I could look around and take in the sights of the Ishimura. But I've wandered off topic now, let's get back to the gameplay. There are many quality of life updates I love about the remake that I want to cover real quick, and I do want to say I have never played Dead Space 2 or 3, so if these are features in those games, I am completely unaware about them. First, I am happy to see the map is now 2D and easy to navigate. I found the 3D map in the original to be very frustrating to use. I also like that you have a line that guides you to the objective that you could pull up instead of opening your map every time to see where you're at. It's also great that all upgrades for the suit are streamlined into one category now instead of being split up, which, while I'm bringing up the upgrade system for the suit, I should also mention it was sweet to see new special upgrades for the weapons that you can find around the ship that boosted their capabilities greatly, like the plasma cutter having like damage over time when you shoot enemies. This always gave me something to look forward to while exploring and motivated me to really keep an eye out for them while also searching for new weapons. This kind of leads into one of the best changes to the game for me, the clearance system. As you play through the Dead Space remake, you will find various locked doors and crates that require a certain level of clearance to access. Well, you only get this clearance access through a new side quest that I won't spoil, but basically as you go through the side quests, you will unlock various levels of clearance over time. But this was an absolute blast to do since it rewarded me appropriately for my time invested in doing it. Almost gave off that Resident Evil Mansion vibe with all the backtracking you did to get that one good item or upgrade that could help you in your next fight. Now, I do want to talk about some specific areas in the remake next that are different from the original, along with some story elements, so there will be spoilers going forward, so turn away now while you can. With that said, let's start with the anti-gravity zones. I loved everything about these. The way Isaac moves around in these zones made for a great experience except for one in specific, the first fight with the Leviathan. I love running in a circle while battling this thing in the original. It was just a really cool experience for me. But floating in that tight area was such a downgrade in the remake for the fight to me. Just kind of lost that epicness to it. Now, when you battle it a second time out in space, this was epic. I loved how this fight played out, and it made it such a shame the first fight wasn't like the original. Would have made the two fights very distinguished from one another, instead of just being basically the same fight, but one being way more superior over the other. Next, I want to say my favorite scene that was redone was the introduction of the Infectors. It was so cool watching that after playing the original. It completely caught me off guard, and honestly, that happened constantly for me in the best way. Like the shooting gallery minigame, I was ready to go to town on it. Then I saw I had to actually use ammo for it. I instantly thought the devs were terrible for this change. Then out of nowhere, I see why they made this change. It's because you get swarmed by enemies in this room. That was awesome to me, and literally made me go through like 40 emotions in 10 seconds. Then going from there, just the general improvements in the game like the reworked relay puzzle or the revamped area where you escort the marker in the final chapter are so much better. Then the final boss fight was perfect. I really mean it. That was an enjoyable, fun fight that made the right improvements over the original. Now, just so I'm not overly positive, I do want to say the room with the nuke was really boring and not interesting at all. Like, that really felt like a downgrade to me compared to the original. Now, with that out of the way...
Well, the administration systems aren't doing much. We could redirect power from there. I'd need to rewire the junction boxes, but we get the ADS cannons back.
we can finally talk about the story. It's just so much more fleshed out. Having Isaac talk now has really brought so much more life into the various scenes and interactions with other characters. He really feels like he's an expert engineer that can fix any problem with his intelligence. Not to mention the new twists they threw into the story slightly caught me by surprise and improved on the original story in every conceivable way. Especially the holograms that you find around the Ishimura, it really brought to life some of these key story elements that help connect the dots together. Even though I will admit, I really wish we could have seen more of Hammond. I really feel like he took a backseat compared to Daniels, which was disappointing to me because let's be honest, Daniels a bit of a bitch. I'm just gonna say it, she's an asshole. But it's not the end of the world for me. This really leads to the biggest point I'm trying to make with this review. There is a limit to how much better you can make a game while trying to stay faithful to the original, and I truly believe this is as close as you can come to doing that. Definitely when you can give classic fans the experience they expect, while also allowing it to be accessible to a new audience. The Dead Space Remake will probably go down as one of the greatest remakes of all time, and hopefully it helps open the eyes for many devs that sometimes you don't need to get overly fancy when remaking a classic that didn't have any problems to begin with. Not to mention, it ran flawlessly for me on my Xbox Series X. I had 0 frame drops from start to finish while playing on performance mode, which, you're always going to get praise from me when that happens. With that said, I can't help but feel like I'm missing something important. That X factor. Something that could make us whole again. Thanks for watching, everyone. Talk to you whenever the next one is.